before you choose what dream you're going to try to chase after, decide if it's worth the sacrifices it would take to get there.
Thank you for tuning in to the Sally Allen podcast, where we give voice to stories of resilience. All right, welcome again to the Sally Allen. No, I don't need to say welcome. It's Sally Allen, your host here again, and today we have an exciting, incredible guest for you. And he is the only guest that's been back to the Sally Allen podcast for the third time. And the reason why he's back is because he's been one of the fans' most favorite. He's recorded with us 2 years ago and then a year ago, and people are still talking about the episodes. So today I want to welcome Jordan Leavitt, known as Monkey King,
Yep.
MMA fighter, girl dad of 3, a 10-month-old and a 3-year-old.
Yep.
Yeah, so we want to welcome him back and just find out where he's at. When we last talked, he had, if you remember the episode, we had lost a fight and we were trying to work through that. But now we're looking to what he's been doing and how things are going. Jordan, welcome.
Well, I'm glad to be back. Repeat, baby.
Only one for 3 episodes. So, yeah. So the last time, when we met, it was very interesting because I had found out you lost a fight and I wanted to have you on here to talk about that. And I just love how you shared about that, how you articulated. You know, you're taking it in good strides. It happens. You're reflecting what happened and you're moving on. How many fights have you had since then?
I actually haven't fought in a year. This is my longest time in between fights. Just a lot of setbacks and things outside of my control. So I've just been focusing on being a dad of 2 now and making those adjustments. And it's been nice. It's been a nice, relaxing year. I'd be lying if I said I'm not a little stressed about not being able to work for a year. But luckily, my job lets me have a little bit more flexibility, and it's been very nice.
Wow, that's really cool. So not fighting for a year, I know because of what you do and it's so physical, what are you doing to keep up with your skill set and your fitness and your health?
I just been still training every day. Just
Okay.
the first 6 months, I was really anxious about it, but then I really was trying to see this as an opportunity as opposed to as something to deal with, because now I could just focus on improving myself as opposed to focusing on what's the opponent going to do? How am I going to fit my style against this person? So now I'm just focusing on improving myself and getting making connections and just enjoying the process. And yeah, I'm happy most of the time until I think about what if I forget how to fight? What if I'm not prepared next time? But I really feel like I've been making a lot of improvements. Yeah, life's great.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing is when you go to fight, the fighter you will be fighting and you're preparing for, his style, so that's how you train.
Yeah.
But now you're just training in general, and sometimes it makes you nervous because you're like, what if I don't know when I go out there and I face my opponent? Is it a valid fear because you go out there and you do pretty well always?
I guess it's only a valid fear if I go out there and it actually affects the fight. But I know objectively,
right,
if I'm just improving myself, I'm going to do better. But then you could always theoretically be oh, what if I was focusing on this instead of this in the year off? But I can't know. It's outside of my control, but I know the better I am, the better I'll perform. So I think most of it's just insecure anxiety, and I'm able to recognize that and move past it and just focus on the everyday, getting 1% better. And that's something I could see measurable improvements on. So I'm just focusing on that.
I like that. Talk to us about how you're focusing on it and just moving past it. What's helping you move past it? What are some of the processes you're using to move past it?
Just really planning out. I started simplifying my training and my goals. I've had the same. I've been taking 3-month blocks where I'm just focusing on one set of skills, one set of tactics for 3 months. That way, when I wake up and I go to the gym, I'm not wondering what am I going to do today? What am I feeling like? I know what I'm going to do because I have the schedule and I'm sticking to it. And if I'm being honest, it feels pretty good to just kind of turn off my brain. I feel like we overthink things. We're humans. We always want to be doing something new, but just going into work every day and just trusting the process and doing what Jordan 3 months ago decided that I should do, it's been pretty nice.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think I know you mentioned when we started there's been a year waiting period. Is that by choice or is that did you decide to do that or employers or decide to say like not yet?
Yeah, it's just a lot of things outside my control. Like I'd get offered a fight, but then I'd rupture an eardrum, or I would like a fight would be agreed to, but then someone else would swoop in and take my opponent, or just like maybe sometimes the matchmakers just forget about like me because I'm very soft spoken and everything. So just things outside my control. I've been ready. I've been ready and preparing for it for the entire year. But that's one of the things about this sport is most of it's based off of like my performance and what I'm putting in.
Yeah.
But there's still like 10% of the things that are outside of my control. And I think I'm just supposed to focus on what I can control. And that's why I think I'm able to have such a good attitude about it, because I could obviously see this year as like a negative, as a failure, but honestly, it's just preparing for the next success. So
I just love that. And I want to focus a little bit for anybody listening to this on the things that are not out of your control, the things that are within your control and how you're dealing with that. I made a video this morning talking about the things that are within your control is your mindset, you taking care of your body, like even your soul, like how you take care. People can't take that away from you when you have that peace, right? What's some of the things you are doing aside from fighting, like to just keep that peace of mind?
I would say like just being able to focus on like my 10-month-old daughter and being actually there for her. When my first daughter was born, we weren't in as stable a position financially. So she was born, was in the NICU. As soon as she was out of the NICU, I was training, and I had a fight scheduled. So I really wasn't able to relax and just be there and be present as much as I'd like until like I had like won my next fight and I had like the free time. But like for the last 10 months, I've just been able to actually, oh, you know what? I'll push my workout back a few hours. I'll get to hang out with my baby in the morning, and I get to see her first steps. I get to see her crawl for the first time, her first words. I've been present for all of those.
Wow.
And it's been really like enriching for me, like personally and spiritually. So yeah, I would say like just being able to be a more present dad has really helped this year, like be a really good year.
That's awesome. And recognizing like that's a blessing in all this, because I love the attitude you're taking on this. Somebody else could have taken another attitude like, how dare they, and I'm not getting this fight and all these things. But you're looking, it's happening, and you're harnessing the opportunities that comes out of this time, which is spending your time with your 10-month-old and your 3-year-old. That's awesome. Yeah, so what else have you been doing aside from training and playing with your daughters? What else are you doing like to prepare?
Just spending time with family, reconnecting with old friends.
Yeah.
Like, I've been doing like this fight thing for 15 years. It's been my singular focus. And like you have to make a lot of sacrifices to be successful. So it's kind of cool to have like a year where I can go travel to go to my friend's baby shower. I can be there for this special event. I could volunteer to do something for my church. I could spend time with my family, go to like family gatherings, things I've been like neglecting for years. Yeah. And it's just nice to kind of have a more like well-rounded life as opposed to just like, I love my family, take care of my wife, take care of my kids, and I work. And that's all I've been doing.
Yeah,
so just, enriching my soul, enriching my personal life.
Yeah. Do you think it'll be hard to go back into fighting given like your experience in this, and it's been 15 years since you experienced? It's sort of a different type of freedom, right? And it's been 15 years and you really seem to be enjoying it. Do you think it'll be hard to go back into fighting?
I think initially. I think I'll be sad when I have to like leave a little bit earlier in the morning to get an extra workout in. I'll miss a few of the milestones, and I'm dreading that because I know it's going to happen at least a few times. But before I had this year off, I was always like, oh, I wish I had more time with my kids. I wish I had more time with my wife. I wish I could like relax and spend time with my family. And I couldn't do it because I had things outside my control pushing me to go put my energy in other places. So now I think it's like recharge my battery. I won't feel as bad. I won't feel as guilty. I won't feel like a failure as a father or a husband.
Yeah.
Knowing that like I had this year just to focus on that. And I think I appreciate it. My family appreciates it. So I think it'll be hard, but I think it'll be I'm better prepared for the stress of fight camp now.
Yeah, yeah. What about your wife? Like you being home full time? Are you driving her crazy?
Oh no! I'm very fortunate. Me and my wife have never even argued before.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, like it's been kind of cool. I think she's a little more spoiled now that I'm like home
That
all
you're
day.
home.
Yeah, because I'm like a busybody. So when I'm not working out, like I'm still doing chores. I'm still doing this. So I think she's very thankful. You know, like she wakes up, I'm doing dishes. You know, my daughter already has breakfast ready. So. I mean, I think maybe her skills have deteriorated during this year. We'll have to see how she reacts to me going into fight camp.
Yeah, she's thinking like, okay, I could get used to this. Very good. And your 3-year-old, what's her name?
Josephine.
Josephine. Is she excited that he's home? Like, does she understand that? And she knows like.
Oh yeah, she's always super happy to see me in the morning because a lot of the times I'd leave before she'd wake up.
Right.
So that that she'd see me after work and she'd be excited. But now it's also bittersweet because I'm with her in the morning. And then when I leave, she knows that I'm leaving. So she'll come up to me and look all sad. I'm like, oh, I got to go. I'll see you in 5 hours, you know?
Yeah.
So I think she's more aware of my schedule and aware of my other things I have to do. And that kind of breaks your heart. That's one of the worst parts about being a parent is you're having a good time with your kid and then you have to leave and they don't quite understand why.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not looking forward to that happening more often. But my daughter's, I think, more aware, but also she knows I'm always coming back, so that's nice.
Yeah. What's your plan? What if this takes more than a year? Have you thought about that and what your plan is?
Probably selling drugs in my plasma, honestly. I'm actually not sure. I'm hopeful.
That was a joke.
That was a joke. I've never done that. But yeah, I hope. I mean, I think I'll be good for another 6 months tops.
Right.
But if they offer me a fight next week and I would take it like that, I'm prepared for, I'm ready, I'm in shape. But yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen. Worst case, I keep wondering, what if I finally get offered a fight and then I blow up my knee and I have to take another year off, and that would be scary.
Yeah.
But I'll handle those stressful situations when they happen. But I think this is a season where I'm sowing a lot of seeds, and I think it's going to bear fruit, and I think I'm being prepared, and set up for success.
I love that. I love that. And don't say what if I blow the knee. What chances are you know? What we put out there is when the fight comes, your body will be prepared. And you'll be strong and you'll be ready to go.
Yeah.
No blowing out anything, not even your eardrums. So what happened to your eardrums, by the way?
So I've ruptured both my eardrums this year at separate times. Not training related. The first time it was in February, I was just sleeping. And I woke up, I thought my kid hit me in my sleep or something. I just woke up zzz, my head was echoing. I'm like, what happened,
Yeah.
My kid's asleep, my wife's asleep, and there's blood on my pillow. And that was really lame because you're just half deaf. And I had no cool story about it. And then last week, I'm just driving because I live in Pahrump, so it's 3,000 feet. You're over a mountain to get to Pahrump.
Yeah.
And I'm just driving up the mountain, and I feel this bubble in my ear, and then it just exploded, and then there's blood coming out of my ear. And I was like, for real? Just because I was just driving over a mountain, and I have a lot of scar tissue from a lot of ear infections. But yeah, so I'm just hoping I don't lose the other eardrum while I'm here, and I'll just be deaf for a few weeks, like 4 to 6 weeks. But very weird.
Do you think that had to do with your fighting, though?
I mean, maybe there's some wear and tear from getting hit.
Yeah.
But yeah, just losing my hearing. It's actually kind of nice because when my kids are stressing me out, I could just cover one ear or turn my head and I can't hear them. I've been sleeping great.
Yeah.
The kids can't wake me up because this is my pillow ear and this is my deaf ear. So just seeing the bright, focusing on the bright side.
Yeah. Jordan, regardless of, I remember now, as I'm talking to you, memories are coming back with our other episodes. But regardless of what you are going through, you always maintain a positive attitude. And what do you think that attributes to?
I think it's from my upbringing. I would say my mother and my sisters were very negative growing up, and I would just notice they're making their experiences a lot worse by focusing and letting all these bad things around them put them in a bad mood. And I feel bad days turn to bad weeks to bad months to bad years. Then you're just bitter. And I feel I've always really had the ability to okay, this is bad, but this is better because this is bad. Like, yes, you're injured, but also now I get to focus on my read. I've always wanted to read more. I always wanted to spend time with my family. And I think there's very few bad situations in your life where you can't just pivot your perspective slightly to view it in a more positive light. Like, nothing's ever happening to me. Things are happening for me. And I just got to decipher how they're happening for me.
Wow. These are the sound bites that people go crazy over when you say stuff like that. I remember. Yeah, yeah. I just love that. And I think, so your story is similar to mine, right? I grew up, your mindset is similar to mine because I grew up very abused and I had this thought process as I was growing up. And you tell me if you were thinking about it from this perspective that long ago. As I was growing up, I was thinking, I am being treated a certain way and I'm feeling a certain way and I never want to make anybody feel that way. Even growing up, I was saying that. I didn't have to become an adult to say it. I knew in my mind there was something about my heart that I never wanted people to feel that way. Do you think like that's when yours started?
Oh, yes. 1,000%.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like a lot of people, when something bad happens to them, they then use that to justify them doing bad things.
Yeah.
I'm an honoring, like, selfish, envious person because this happened to me. But I feel like bad things that happen to you can just as easily be a reason for you never to do those things.
Yes.
Like, everyone around me had a really violent, explosive temper, and that's why I'm never going to let my temper take control of me. Like, people were very selfish and abusive in my upbringing. That's why I'm never going to be abusive and selfish. I'm not going to let my story be like the story you watch on the television where it's like, oh, this is why this person became a villain.
Yeah.
It's like, no, these bad things drove me to become the best version of myself. So no matter what happens to me, it's going to make me a better person because I've decided to view it from that perspective, from that frame.
Yeah, I really like that, Jordan, because at the end of the day, we all have a choice how we respond to the bad things that happen to us. We might not have control of the bad things that are happening, but we have a choice in how we respond. And regardless of if we're younger, we're older, we always have a choice in how we respond. And I love that you responded that way. I can relate to it because I responded that way and I became the person who I am today. Yeah, did I struggle through some anger? And did I struggle through some all the feels and the emotions? Yeah, but for the most part, making that decision to find a positive. I just love people like that because I can take any situation and find the positive in it. And I feel almost any situations you can find the positive in it. Yeah. Is that why when you walk down, on the runway to get to your fight, you do those fantastic music?
Yeah. Like a lot of people, like I always do like baby making music for my walkout songs. I like, I like to set the mood, like favorite songs like Hot in Here, Grind on Me. I love like the playful songs because if I get knocked out in my fight, I'm not going to remember the fight, period, but I may remember my walkout. I'll remember how I was feeling backstage, like how I was feeling with like all my bros back there. So I'm just trying to have a good time. I think a lot of people, they're like, oh, the fight's a very like scary thing.
Yeah.
I got to hype myself up for it. And it's like no matter what I do before I walk in that cage and the doors get locked, it's going to be a terrifying thing. Why am I going to make it more terrifying, more significant, more huge in my mind? Like, no, I'm going to walk out to some stupid like playful rap song about grinding at a club, and then we're gonna fist fight. And if I lose, whatever, I feel like the song is all about just what's the last memory, what's the last moment I want to have before this scary thing. And it's like if you were told you had one day to live your life, you're not gonna be like, well, let me make this the worst day ever. You make it the most positive experience ever, hopefully,
Yeah. So. I love that. And I want us to talk to the audience more about that, especially, and we might have done this, but I feel you're in a different place in your life, so it might throw a different perspective on it, that we're talking to someone younger who wants to get into fighting or who wants to get into some type of wrestling or sport like that. Like they have a choice on mindset is important, is what I'm hearing you say. How you set your mind as you're doing this before you get into the fight and what you do. So what advice would you give to them if they're listening to this?
Oh, what advice would I give if they wanted to pursue a dream like mine?
Yeah.
I would say before you choose what dream you're going to try to chase after, decide if it's worth the sacrifices it would take to get there. a lot of people, they're like, oh, I'm willing to, oh, it's just going to be hard. It's 10 years of work. But it's not just 10 years of hard work. You have to say yes to positive things that will bring you happiness and joy immediately. Like, I missed my friends' weddings. I missed, a lot of family things. I missed a lot of fun, maybe enriching experiences. And it was worth it because it worked out for me. Like, I had someone ask me, like, last week, it's like, oh, was it worth it? And I was like, it was worth it for me. He's like, is it worth it for me, though? And I was like, well, it depends on what you're sacrificing. Like, if you have to give up everything for, one shot at this dream, maybe it's not worth it.
Yeah.
But if those things don't matter as much, I would say it's very much worth it. Like, for me, it was worth it. I don't feel like I would have found as much value in another life.
Wow.
Yeah, so just decide what's worth sacrificing. If it's not, then don't do it. Don't feel pressure to do it. No one's forcing you to live a dream.
Right.
There are 1,000 dreams you could go after.
Yeah. So I love that. So deciding if the sacrifices that you have to make, if it's worth it to you.
Yeah.
That's one, I think you have to decide that. And two, what I heard you said a couple of minutes ago was also the mindset thing, right? If you are in it just to win that fight. It seems like what I'm hearing you say, you enjoy the whole experience, including your music that you choose to walk out, right? If you're just in it and you're focusing on winning that fight, then you're setting yourself up to fail.
Yeah. It's like focusing on a finite game or an infinite game.
Yes.
If your goal is all about like these 8 weeks of preparation and one result, it's a hit or miss if it's going to be a good experience. But if it's like, okay, I'm looking at this experience as like the grand scheme, my entire life, and I'm just trying to enjoy it and be the best version of myself until my last breath, there's a lot more like wiggle room about whether or not this specific experience is a positive or a negative. So for me, it's like, oh no, like the fights, the results of the fights aren't what I'm chasing after. If I fight my best possible fight, I have great preparation, and I grow as an individual and I lose, yeah, it'll suck to lose, but that's not why I'm in this. I could have made more money, been happier, more stable doing other things, but I'm doing this because this experience brings the most fulfillment to my life. And I like going into my everyday knowing there's a purpose I'm going towards, there's meaning in it, and it's just nice to know exactly where I stand. And the results don't matter. I'm not results driven. I'm the method is what drives me. Yeah.
And I think the method and the process, going through it, enjoying the process as you go through it, and then celebrating the wins. Because one thing I know, when people have a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset, they just don't look at the North Star, which is over there, and I'm just going to reach a North Star, but they're celebrating the success along the way. And I think you do that well. You're celebrating, I'm gonna walk on the runway, I'm gonna have my music, I'm gonna work out. I think you celebrate along the way.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about that, right? The last time. So talk to us a little bit about, you're working out now, and that's part of like you're living now and preparing for the fight. What are some of the things you're celebrating?
I'm celebrating whenever like my technique gets slightly better, I take film of what I'm like doing a certain workout, and I'm like, I look really bad doing that.
Yeah.
But then 6 weeks later, I'm I'm a totally different person.
Yeah.
And I'm celebrating every time one of my coaches, someone I trust, like, you're doing this very specific one thing. You're doing this so much better, and I'm celebrating it. I'm celebrating when I'm not as sore after a certain workout. I'm celebrating when, like, a day, like my weekly schedule goes off without any issues. Like everything's like working, everything's flowing into each other. I don't get injured. Even if I'm just stretching better, like I'm celebrating all the little wins. Like, I ate a good breakfast and I felt better during the workout. What a good day, Yeah. There's so much things I could improve on that aren't just tied to the result of a fight. And I'm never going to be perfect at it. But I can make little incremental improvements in all these different areas, and it's exciting.
Okay, so I have to tell you, if you listen to the last episode to this one, you were different, Jordan, because you were so hard on yourself on the last one when we talked. You didn't celebrate the little things, and we were talking about it. We're like, what do you do? Well, you did, but not as much. You would go get a book. Mm-hmm. Do you remember? And now I feel like you do so much more of it, the celebrating part of it. When was that switch, and what caused that switch?
So I did a jiu-jitsu, a professional jiu-jitsu match, like in May, and that's like a totally different sport. And for me, it was the opportunity to compete, but like had no pressure. So I remember just going into that fight week, and I was just there to coach a friend, and then I was going to compete in jiu-jitsu. It was a silly thing I wasn't going to take seriously. And I went to like my walkout, I wore like a trench coat and a singlet, and I like did a little strip
Of course
tease.
you did.
And I was competing, and like there was no pressure. And I was like, even though I lost, it was like a sport, like I didn't plan on winning. You know, I went out there and I lost, but like very, like, not a bad loss. And I was like, wow, imagine if I would have taken that seriously. And then I went to the store, because I promised you I'd go to the store after my next competition. I got myself a book, and I was like, oh, that process was so much fun. Just not worrying about the result of a match or a competition, just going out there and just like, oh, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to enjoy myself, get some good photo op opportunities. And it was just like a monumental success of a week in terms of like, oh, I now know what I have to work on, but I took no damage, and I enjoyed myself. I hit all my goals. Yeah, I would say like that jiu-jitsu match in May was probably a nice little turning point, because I realized that even if the match or the competition doesn't go my way, like the process is what I loved. And before I got to the UFC, when I was up and coming, didn't have all these big ideas about supporting my family just with fighting, being in the UFC. I was just training every day, and I would fight, and I would have no nerves, and it was the most freeing thing. So just being able to recapture that.
Yeah, it must have felt really good.
Yeah.
So I thought I heard you said coaching. Did you coach somebody for the jiu-jitsu, or were you coached?
So my friend was competing for a promotion where they do like several martial arts in one event.
Yeah.
And he was doing a kickboxing fight, and I was to coach him. And they're like, well, while you're in town, would you like to do a grappling match? And I was like, I mean, sure. Like, why not? I'll get paid to go out there. That'd be fun. So then, like, I grappled. My friend cornered me. Then, like, the match is over. Then I went there and cornered him. Like, I was still dripping sweat. That he was out there fighting. It brought me back. It's like the wild west. Like, everything wasn't so like sanitized and official. And you got 13 minutes before the commercials are on. It was really cool just to go out there and just focus on competing, and then being there for a friend, and just celebrating the wins and the successes.
It's funny, the moment you said the word coach, that question was in my head. Have you thought about coaching?
Yeah, it's funny because I've coached for several fights the past year. And I would say it's more anxious to coach for somebody than it is to experience it. Like your friend's getting like kicked in the head, and you're just like, you're flinching, you're like blocking it, you're experiencing it. But it's so much easier to be happy for someone else's successes. At least for me, I see my friends succeed, and they're all bloodied, and their hand gets raised after a hard-fought win. I'm like, dang, this is the best feeling in the world.
Yeah.
I see why so many fighters, they can never leave the space. As soon as they retire, they're coaching. They're in this space until they die. And I understand that. So I think I can see a future where I coach. And I think there's a lot of meaning and fulfillment in that. And it's like taken this year for me to realize, like, okay, there are so many things I could do in this space that I've like dedicated my life to. And yeah, I feel like when I next compete, I'll be a lot more free, a lot more expressive, a lot more thankful, and just living and experiencing this whole fight thing with like a spirit of gratefulness. And I'm just happy about it.
Yeah. So any other fighters listening to this, you would also say this year for you has been such a blessing to give you headspace to really think and see your future and see how different it could be, but also see the other things that you could be doing within this space that you love, as you said it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's important sometimes to take that time to see that. Yeah,
I feel like for most of the last 15 years, my identities have been tied to just this one aspect of who I am. And I'm a multifaceted individual. I do so many other things besides just fighting. Like even if I train, I've been training for 15 years. That's top 6 hours of my day. The other 18 hours, I'm somebody else. I'm doing other things. And just realizing that like who I am as a person isn't defined by what I do in this one sport during these athletic years of my life from like 20 to 40. There's just so much more to me. And then after fighting, there's so much more after. Like I'm not even halfway done, hopefully,
So I want you to talk to our audience. This will make such a good clip to tell them that their identity isn't tied into what they do. their identity, because they are multifaceted, they are more than one dimension. They're so 3-4 dimensional in facets of their lives. I want you to talk a little bit more about that. I think it's so important for somebody to hear that so many people think their identity is tied into their jobs, and that's not the case. So talk a little bit more about identity.
I feel like we're a lot of, like we mentioned, how like identities, a lot of people tie it to what they do on the day to day.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is especially a problem like in the West, you know? Like in other cultures, like people are always like living for like the future. Like, oh, when I'm done working, then I'll discover myself. When
Then
I'm
I'll
retired,
retire,
then
yeah.
I'll do the things I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it's like when you get older, you have less of a capacity to enjoy those times, to enjoy that free time, because you're not as healthy. You have all these other things, all these other responsibilities you have to worry about. And I really feel like a lot of people don't know who they are in those quiet moments of their life, because they're always focused on the hustle and bustle of working, paying the bills, finding a spouse, that you're a dad. But you're not just a dad, you're also the individual. And I feel like being present in my household, being a father, and having a lot more downtime. Like I know who I am. I know more of myself as a dad. I know more of myself as an individual, because no matter what you do, you have more quiet moments than hectic moments. And I feel like if you can look at the mirror and be happy with what you see, even if you're not doing anything particularly special at that time, I feel like that's a life worth living, as opposed to having an exciting job, work, and like doing really good work, but that's only a certain really small fraction of your life. And people put all this weight into that one small aspect. And I really feel like actions are important, but who you are in your mind and your thoughts and your heart, I feel like has a lot more weight, and it gains more weight as you get older.
Yeah, Jordan, that is gold. And I discovered what you were saying 10 years ago, 13 to 15 years ago, because I always, my thought process was, when I retire, I love serving and volunteering. And when I retire, I'll volunteer, and I've been wanting to volunteer globally. And I had this epiphany 15 years ago where I realized, like, sometimes you have this epiphany, tomorrow isn't guaranteed. So why am I waiting till I retire to travel to Cambodia to fight against human trafficking and do the things that I love to do? So I just told my boss at the time, I'm like, I'm going to be going to Cambodia for 15 days. And I'm sorry, it was a very high stress job, but I'm going to be leaving you for 15 days. And you're just going to have to deal with it, because I want to start living that retirement life. I'm looking like, what, 20 more years? No. So I love that, because I can so resonate with it that I started traveling the globe 15 years ago. And it's been a game changer for me, because I'm in a space now. I thought, if I passed right now or tomorrow, I feel like I've fulfilled the things that I've been putting out, that I've been wanting to do. And I feel like you were there too.
Yeah. Like my best friend, he's a teacher, and he's always like, oh, when I'm retired, would I do this? Would I do that? And that's like our number one like sense of tension, because we've been best friends for like 17 years. And he's like, aren't you worried about the future? I'm like, I'm not sure I'm going to have a future. You know, like I'm worried about the now.
Yeah.
He's like, well, like what about when you retire? Like I may not live to be retired. I may not be able to do all these things that like you're planning to do. And you're not sure if you're going to do it. And it's just, I feel like a lot of people, we've just been trained to like, you'll be happy later.
Yeah.
But you can choose to be happy now. You can choose to have a fulfilling life now.
That's right. Absolutely. And like you said a few minutes ago, when you're old and you're tired, you don't have the strength to do these things also. So why won't you try to do it now? And granted, some people can't, and they have to work. But I do feel you can do a little bit of what you want to do now, as opposed to waiting until you retire. Mm-hmm. Because for me, it's just 15, 20 years. I can't even imagine waiting till then to travel to another country to volunteer. That's too long for me.
Yeah. Like, I'm not old, but as I'm getting older, like...
You're not old.
I'm not old. I'm just 29, you know? But like...
You're spry.
I'm young, you know? I'm pretty spry. I'm springy, you know? Like, people are always trying to like, now that I'm in my 70s, I want to finally have a relationship with my kids. And then the kids don't want to have a relationship with you because you weren't there for the first, 50 years of their life. And I'm like even seeing that just like family. Like, I don't know why my kids don't want to have a relationship with me. It's like, well, you're 75. They have their own grandkids. Like,
That's right.
You missed out. Like, you were pushing back, making these important decisions.
That's right.
And now they don't have as much significance. And even if everything works out, when you try to reconnect with somebody, you try to make these big decisions, you have less time to enjoy it.
That's right. And they say, well, we're making sacrifices for you, but that was the sacrifice you decided to make. It wasn't the sacrifice they wanted you to make for them at the time. And I think that's such an important thing to see. Wow, Jordan, this was really good. Our time flew by like really fast. Is there anything you want to talk about that I didn't ask you?
Is there anything I want to talk about that I didn't ask you? Oh.
You have the stage.
Oh, no, now I'm on the spot. Now I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything.
Okay. It means that I did my job well, asking you all the questions. Yeah. Well, it was so good having you on here and sharing where you're at now. I love where you're at. The person 2 years ago is a different person. And I think that has to do because 2 years ago when we spoke, you didn't have headspace. You were in the throes of what you were doing, and you've had a year to reflect and have headspace. And I love the way you're looking at life. You've always looked at a positive side, but the way you look at it now, it's just so healthy, especially when it comes to your girls and how you're enjoying them. So with that, do you have any parting words for our audience?
Yeah, I would say my life was really good where I was able to view everything happened to me in a positive light. I'm actually finally able to view myself in a positive way, as opposed to just being this this person that maybe doesn't deserve all these great things. And like, oh, I'm just a bad guy, but good things happen to me. But I'm actually able to look in the mirror and be like, oh, that's a good person looking back. And I'm happy with what I see in the mirror. So like, even though I've always counted myself very fortunate, I've always viewed things in a very positive way, I wasn't viewing myself separate from all these things happening to me in a positive way. I think that made like all the difference.
No, that calls for a mic drop. So yeah. So with that, I think one of the key points that we cover here today, if you're watching this and you're watching till the end, just know that your identity is not tied into what you do. Your identity is not tied into being a dad or even your job. You are your own person, and you're multi-dimensional, and you have so many different facets of who you are. So it's good to discover those, and don't wait till you're retired to do the things you love to do. Yeah. And with that, friends, it's a wrap. Thank you for tuning in to the Sally Allen podcast, where we give voice to stories of resilience. Until next time, this is Sally Allen. Remember that every setback is a setup for a comeback. And remember, if you like this podcast, the only way we can get it out is if you like, subscribe, and share.